Welcome back to The Wellness Effect. Why haven't you subscribed yet? And what are you waiting for? Hit the subscribe button to not miss out. Today we have financial advisor Terrence Viviers in studio. He's going to help us look at retirement, more specifically at what retirees should and shouldn't be doing when it comes to their hard-earned money. Welcome, Terrence.
Awesome. Thank you for having me, Seth.
It's a pleasure to have you. It feels like I am at the dentist having an uncomfortable conversation when it comes to retirement. But I'm really excited to have this conversation because it's a pressing issue in our country. So how should retirees approach budgeting for their expenses when it comes to retirement?
Well, there's a couple of main things you can look at, starting with housing, food, medical expenses. I would say those are the main things you can focus on. If we start and we look at food, we all know in South Africa, food costs are rising rapidly. So actually, most of the big providers have made it easy for us. In the comfort of your own home, on your couch, you can now shop around for the necessities. They drop it off at your door. So actually shopping around, it's not a waste of your time. You don't drive from shop to shop now, spending hard-earned petrol. And also you survive that sweet aisle, I call it the gauntlet. So that also helps. That doesn't happen on your couch. So that's good news. And then also if you look at the certain pensioners get discounts on certain days. So it might actually be worth your while spending all of your money once a month, saving 20% just because there's pensioner discount at a certain provider. Then if we look at housing, not only can you downscale, because you need to think of this, you don't need a 5-bedroom house anymore. You can downscale to a 2-bedroom house because the kids are out. It's maybe just you and your wife. So it's not necessary for all that space, all that electricity, the ground taxes, all of that you'll be paying. So I actually think it's worth it downscaling. Then if you look at downscaling, frail care is important after you've retired. So some of the retirement housing offers you frail care on site. That might save you on your medical expenses as well because it's on site. You don't have to go to a hospital every time something happens. So if you look at housing as well, moving to a cheaper area, because you don't have to be close to the schools, close to the shopping malls anymore. You can actually move to a lower cost area, which will give you the same amenities, everything you need, just at a lower cost.
What are the primary sources of income retirees should consider, and how can they optimize them?
Seth, so importantly, everyone's situation is different. So some retirees do have a big home that they've paid off, that they can actually either rent out and rent a smaller property or actually sell it, invest that money, and with that investment money, rent a smaller property. And that goes a long way. What also I think is vital is making sure the annuities or the income that you are withdrawing, that you are being correctly advised, because it's vital that there's alternative options in the market when it comes to funds. You don't have to use the same old approach that we've been using for hundreds of years. There is definitely alternative of investment options available in the market, and that goes a long way in stretching the retirees' money for as long as possible.
So what are the common mistakes that retirees often make, financial mistakes, and how can they avoid them?
That's a great question. What they often do is they withdraw too quickly from their annuities. So let me give you an example. If your advisor sends you a fund statement and he says your fund is growing at, let's say, 11%, and you think I'm only withdrawing 10% from my life savings. In South Africa, you can choose between 2.5 and 17.5% as a drawdown from your investment. So you might think that 10% is below the 11% fund growth, but you have to reckon in for platform costs, advisor fees. That might add another 3%. So now what happens is you're actually withdrawing 13% per annum instead of the 11% that the fund's growing at. And what happens is your fund goes backwards very quickly. And that snowballing effect is dangerous because you can actually year on year now start eating into that big pot of money that you have. And now every year, even though you're keeping on the same 10%, you have less and less to withdraw from. So it's very important that you speak to your financial advisor regularly, that you make sure what are you withdrawing, what is the funds looking like. Also, it depends on the time of the year. And if you think of what happened during COVID, a lot of the people's investments just flatten out a little bit. So it might be worth your while those years to actually withdraw a little bit less. You are at home more anyway, and then you can move it back up. Every year you can change that income percentage that you withdraw from. And another mistake that the retirees make is they actually don't budget. So you as a working man are used to budgeting. And then they think after I'm retiring, I don't have to budget anymore. I actually think it's more important to budget after retirement to make sure that you know what you're spending your money on, what's coming in, what's going out. I think that's vital.
What should retirees consider in terms of health expenses, and how can they plan effectively around these expenses?
So, as we all know, inflation is a problem in South Africa. Medical aid inflation is even sometimes double of what normal inflation is. So, the advice I can give you is to make sure that if you, let's say, in your budget allow for 6,000 Rand for medical aid, you shouldn't start as a new retiree on 6,000 Rand, because that medical aid inflation is going to push up your medical aid by close to 10% per annum. So it's advisable to start off actually with a lower package, start off with a cheaper package and build up over the next few years, knowing that you have that in your budget. And also, I think it's vital for retirees to stay healthy, to eat healthy, because not only can you avoid most of the main medical conditions, but by eating less, you're going to save food. Eating less junk food, you're going to save money. But also, you can make sure that you are living healthier. An hour a day walking can save you a lot of money just on medical expenses alone.
Are there any trends in retirement planning that retirees should be aware of in the coming years?
Okay, there's nothing new. Con- if you think of compound interest, it stays at one of the world. Let me give you an example. When you just start off in this line and you become an advisor, they give you the example of if myself and you, we start saving, but we both 20 years old. Now I start saving 1,000 Rand a month at 20 years old, and I stop at 30. So that money is going to roll on now with interest. And you only start at 30. You would have to save well past 50, even though I stopped at 30 to end up with the same amount as me. So
Wow.
that compound interest stays the eighth wonder of the world. There's no new trends. What I'm seeing with young professionals are they are definitely not saving enough. Our grandparents, the previous generations, they were definitely saving between 10 and 15% of their monthly income.
Mm.
With the new generation, we feel like we were living for the year now. We don't care about the future. And I think it's important that they really speak to a financial advisor, because if they start young enough, the power of that compound interest carries them all the way. So I can answer your question by saying, I really hope there's a new trend starting with the new generation. So by the time they get to retirement, they would be sorted. They don't have to worry. The planning's been done for 30 years, continuous planning, making sure they can retire comfortably.
So, Terrence, how much of an income do we need when we retire as compared to when you're working?
At the end of the day, everyone's situation is different. It depends on how much debt you have. Hopefully you get to retirement with no debt. The properties that you have that you can either rent out or sell for income. But at the end of the day, I would say the most important thing is planning to end up close to about 75% of your income that you are currently earning. But that income needs to increase every year. Because if you can keep up with inflation, we're all human. So if I give you X amount every month, you're going to live up close to that amount. Some people even live above that. So if you're retiring and you start off with something that you're comfortable with, but that can increase with inflation, you'll be able to keep up till the day that you die.
So what you're saying is, as my increases come, or as your income increases, you increase your retirement
100%.
savings as well.
100%. So yeah, your income from your retirement savings.
Mhm.
So actually, you start with that pot instead of taking as much as you can from that pot. You actually start off on a lower income. Get used to that, and that'll increase then every single year, so you can keep up with inflation.
Terrence, what should we consider in relation to medical aid for retirees?
Firstly, please don't stop your medical aid because you probably need it the most due to age and illnesses that come with age. But I think you should definitely speak to your financial advisor and consider the options because with some medical aids, you can choose, you don't have to necessarily go for the top option that you were used to. Let's say your work paid for your medical aid. Now that you're paying for it with your own money, you can look at a medium option, let's call it that, with a good gap cover that'll cover you for those specialist costs or most of those specialist costs when you go into hospital, which could be huge bills. So I would say that that'll definitely work. A good, decent medical aid with a good gap cover to cover those additional expenses that your medical aid might not cover.
And when is the right time to start planning for your retirement?
Now, as soon as you can, even if as soon as you receive your first paycheck, you should already be starting. It's like buying your first car. That debit order knocks you, but as soon as you get used to it, buying the next car, you don't really think about that same debit order again. It's sort of you're used to it. So if you get that first paycheck and you spend it all, you're not going to get used to taking 10% of that or taking 15% of your salary away. If you get used to that from your first paycheck, you'll never have a problem retiring.
Terrence, thank you so much for such an engaging conversation. I think you've given us some tools and things we can do to plan for our retirement.
It's been awesome. Thank you so much.
And thank you to you, our viewers, for joining us today. All the previous and upcoming episodes of The Wellness Effect are available here, so make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell. See you next time. Bankmed, the medical scheme of choice for the financial services industry. The Wellness Effect is proudly brought to you by Bankmed, yours in good health.